The hot June morning of 2018 began with an unusual commotion on Owens Road in the suburbs of North Las Vegas. 6 unmarked police cars quietly pulled up in front of a modest, single-story house at the end of the block. Neighbors peeked through their curtains as tactical-geared officers surrounded the area, communicating briefly over radios. Inside, 35-year-old Ryan Hale was brewing coffee and getting ready to head to work at a nearby auto repair shop. A regular routine for a man the neighborhood knew as calm, polite, and reclusive. The pounding on the door came at 7:32 a.m. Ryan Hale, Clark County Sheriff's Department. "We have a warrant for your arrest in connection with the disappearance of engineer Daniel Carter, Henderson, 2002. The officers later recounted that his hand trembled slightly as he set down his coffee mug, but his gaze remained eerily calm, as if he had been waiting for this moment for 16 years. Before diving deeper into the story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the latest cases. September 2002, Henderson, a quiet suburb on the southeastern edge of Las Vegas, was blanketed in the harsh, dry sun, typical of the Nevada desert. Unpaved dirt roads led into the Silver Bowl Industrial Park, where a series of warehouses were being erected amid sand and steel. At night, sodium lights from tall poles cast a murky yellow glow over the construction site, creating a half-alive, half-dead scene of a city in the making. Amid the stifling heat and the fading hum of machinery, only the wind whistling through corrugated metal sheets and steel frames remained. Daniel Carter, the construction site supervising engineer, was often the last to leave. 40 years old, tall and lean. With a calm demeanor, he was known among the engineering team for his meticulousness and habit of checking every item before heading home. Those who worked with him said he lived by the clock, a man who rarely allowed mistakes and never left the site without locking the office door. That evening, as the shift ended, most workers had gone home, with only a few lights spilling from the temporary office area. A colleague recalled seeing Daniel step out of the room, holding a notebook and blueprints, heading toward the partially built warehouse where tools and materials were stored. He paused for a few seconds to look around, then continued out of sight behind the row of concrete walls. That was the last time anyone saw him. Afterward, the site fell silent, with only the wind blowing through the dry sand and the faint clink of metal as gusts rattled unsecured scaffolding. That night, at the small house more than 10 miles from the site, the Carter family kitchen lights stayed on. Melissa Carter, Daniel's ex-wife, was used to him coming home late, but as the hours grew later, unease set in. On the kitchen table, the clock blinked nearing midnight. She tried calling the site phone, no answer. His cell phone rang out before going silent. Melissa figured he might be staying to handle something urgent, but by dawn, as sunlight filtered through the curtains and Daniel's side of the bed remained empty, fear began to creep in. The next morning, their daughter Emily called the company office. The person on duty said Daniel wasn't there and hadn't called in sick. His cell phone was still out of service. When Melissa stepped out onto the porch, the early Las Vegas sun shone down on the quiet street, and a chill ran down her spine with the premonition that something had truly happened. She looked around, as if waiting for a familiar car to appear, but the road remained empty. Hand on the phone, Melissa dialed emergency services, her voice trembling as she told the operator that Daniel Carter was missing, and she hadn't been able to reach him all night. The operator asked Melissa to stay on the line while transferring the call to the Henderson Police Department's emergency response unit. Nearly an hour later, 2 patrol officers arrived at the small house in the suburban neighborhood. They entered the living room, recording personal details, the time Daniel left home, his workplace, and the last known contacts the family had. Melissa recounted every detail she could. Daniel was a supervising engineer at Silver Bowl Industrial Park, divorced but still in regular contact with her and their daughter. He had never stayed out overnight, never gone incommunicado or left without notice. She handed them a recent photo of Daniel in his construction safety gear and provided his license plate, office phone number, and the name of the project manager he reported to. After completing the report, the case was officially logged as an adult missing person, circumstances unclear. That same morning, an initial inspection team was dispatched to the Silver Bowl site where Daniel worked. The industrial park sprawled across dozens of acres, lying quiet amid strips of dry desert and glaring sunlight. When they arrived, the morning shift workers had started, but Daniel's temporary office was locked, curtains drawn, with no signs of disturbance. The project manager confirmed Daniel oversaw the night shift, often staying late to compile reports and check the warehouse before leaving. A colleague said he saw him leave the temporary office toward the materials storage at the end of the shift, carrying a notebook and blueprints. After that, no one saw him. Police surveyed the surrounding area, mapping the overall site layout: temporary office, engineer parking lot, materials dump, warehouse row, and access road to the highway. Daniel's car was parked in its usual spot, locked with no signs of forced entry. Inside the site, everything appeared orderly. An officer noted in the report no evidence of violence or technical incident, but the absence of the main night supervisor was unusual. While the inspection team worked the scene, another group contacted hospitals, medical centers, and nearby police stations to check if any man matching the description had been admitted for emergency care or detained overnight. All results negative. The missing person information was sent to highway patrol stations and Las Vegas police units to expand the search. That afternoon, Melissa and daughter Emily were invited to the police station to provide additional statements. Emily said her father had called home the previous evening, voice calm, nothing unusual. He asked if she and her mom had eaten dinner, then hung up after less than a minute. That was the last contact they knew of. Officers noted the detail as the final confirmed time Daniel was alive. By day's end, the preliminary report was complete. The new file, numbered 09 KRNV 02, opened with a simple line: Daniel Carter, male, 40 years old. Construction supervising engineer at Silver Bowl Industrial Park, missing for unknown reasons. Henderson police kept the case at active monitoring level, planning a full re-sweep of the industrial park the next morning for any clues to where Daniel Carter went the night he vanished. The next morning, as the sun rose over the low hills on Henderson's edge, the Henderson Police Department's first search team arrived at Silver Bowl Industrial Park. Fine dust covered the access road, desert wind carrying dry heat that rattled the temporary corrugated metal fences. The entire site spanned over 10 acres, with many areas under construction left incomplete. Half-erected steel frames, uncovered concrete blocks, scattered materials and machinery under tarps. The investigation team split into 3 groups. One swept Daniel's work area, another checked the parking lot and temporary office. The third walked the corridor, connecting the warehouse and materials dump, where he was last seen. From outside, the site looked normal, but deeper in, they quickly realized the terrain was more complex than the map. Numerous temporary paths created during construction, overlapping concrete pours with unclear boundaries. On the sandy ground, excavator and concrete mixer tire tracks crisscrossed, mostly dry and hard to date accurately. Daniel's temporary office sat in the site's center, 2 containers joined together, containing a desk, file cabinet, and technical drawing board on the wall. Door locked, but inside everything neat. On the desk, a ceramic mug with coffee residue dried into brown streaks. Next to it, a stack of partially printed papers with handwritten concrete volume figures. An officer documented the scene, photographing the full office layout. No signs of struggle or rummaging. Laptop still there, screen off, power cord plugged in. File cabinet held technical documents, safety inspection items, and weekly supervision schedules, stacked neatly by date. From the office, the second group headed west to the warehouse area where Daniel was last seen. This was the newest part, just steel frame up and partial foundation poured, surrounded by orange caution tape, uneven ground mixed dry sand strips, and patchy concrete. Surface showed no skid marks, blood or clear footprints, just thick, even dust. A site worker led the search team around, pointing out the path Daniel usually took to check structures, According to him, that area was only accessed by Daniel at day's end as part of technical oversight. Police recorded the statement, marking the location on the scene map. In the materials dumped behind, person-high piles of gravel, cement and sand lay scattered. Some mixers and containers showed recent use marks. Officers checked around, finding no personal items, possibly Daniel's. They photographed, measured distances between warehouse and office, drew a temporary map showing likely movement from last sighting to parking lot. Along the rough concrete corridor connecting the areas, only concrete truck tire marks. No additional footprints or foreign objects on the ground. One officer suggested checking the southern temporary fence area, rarely visited due to waste materials. Unlocking the rusty fence panel, inside was a small dirt lot with wooden planks, excess concrete blocks, and metal pipes. All thickly dust-covered, no signs of recent movement. While the scene team worked, the records officer gathered shift and night duty info from company staff. The log showed only 5 people at the site after 7 p.m. Daniel the last to leave the main area. Electronic time clock entries matched colleague accounts. All others confirmed no strange noises or incidents that evening. Police compiled a list, asking them to stay available pending scene results. That afternoon, as sunlight slanted, the search team finished the outer perimeter survey. They walked the site's enclosing fence, noting length and condition of each section. A few spots bent from strong winds or site vehicle impacts, but no signs of opening or removal. From the east corner, the full office and warehouse view was visible, but no security cameras operational as the system wasn't installed yet. In the day's summary report, the team leader wrote, "Complex site terrain, many new concrete areas, no traces of altercation, personal items, or unusual vehicle movement. Need further sweep with construction company to pinpoint victim's specific work area the night of the incident." Leaving the site, the day was turning to evening. Late light casting over the hazy dust on massive concrete blocks. No one said it, but all felt the same, that what they sought, person or trace, seemed swallowed by the desert. The following morning, with the site survey report submitted, Henderson police decided to expand the search beyond the construction area. That day's temperature topped 100 degrees F, dry air and dust making deployment difficult. A new search team formed, coordinating local police, rescue forces, and volunteer engineers from the construction company. Focus areas around Silver Bowl Industrial Park, including empty land strips, access roads to I-515 highway, and temporary warehouses west of the site. From the air, it appeared as a vast patchy concrete expanse, dotted with container rows and winding dirt roads to Henderson suburbs. Early morning, 2 K9 units deployed. Dogs trained to detect live human scent and blood traces started from Daniel's temporary office, his last known location. They sniffed along corridors, warehouse and northern side paths. Accompanying officers marked areas on the map, noting dog movement directions. A few times, they paused near the materials dump, but continued, no strong reaction, no clear signals. Overhead, a support helicopter scanned with infrared camera over a 5-mile radius. Under desert sun, high ground heat made screen images flicker, hard to distinguish objects from shadows. No body traces or abandoned vehicles. By mid-morning, the search split into 2 groups. One walked the road linking site to new residential development. The other checked toward the highway, the only route to the city. They examined road shoulders, drainage ditches, temporary pits, using metal detectors and ground-penetrating radar for shallow burials. Many water bottles, metal scraps, industrial waste found, but nothing tied to Daniel Carter. In the southern lot, a few workers said they saw vehicle lights moving late that night, but couldn't confirm direction or plates. Report noted, but police rated reliability low due to no surveillance cameras. Afternoon, the area map spread on a patrol car hood, search points marked in red. Each cleared area crossed off, gradually narrowing around the site. By day's end, about 15 square miles checked. K9s exhausted from heat. Rescue team pausing often for water. One officer logged, No signs of victim leaving Silver Bowl area. No personal items, tire tracks or clothing found. While the search teams continued working at the scene, at Melissa's home, the mother and daughter were still waiting for news. Emily kept looking out the window, with the phone placed ready on the table, waiting for a call from the police. Friends and neighbors stopped by to console them, everyone saying that Daniel might have just had vehicle trouble or gone on an urgent business trip and forgotten to report it. Melissa tried to believe that hypothesis, but deep down, something still felt uneasy. He would never leave without telling her, and certainly never leave work unfinished. When a police officer came to inform them that the first day of searching had ended without results, she nodded in thanks, trying to stay calm. That evening, the local news in Henderson aired a brief segment. Police are searching for a 40-year-old construction engineer missing since Tuesday evening at the Silver Bowl industrial area. Daniel Carter, a local resident, was last seen at the construction site. His whereabouts remain unknown. The only image was the company ID photo of Daniel provided by Melissa, a serious face, eyes looking straight ahead, with a gray industrial background behind. The news caught the attention of many at the company. A few colleagues called to check in but had no additional details. On the second day, the search expanded further eastward, where water supply pipelines ran along the open land. A team used drone equipment to capture panoramic footage, aiming to identify areas where an accident might have occurred or any unusual signs on the ground. The collected data showed completely flat terrain, with no sinkholes or new subsidence points. As night fell, police decided to temporarily suspend the search due to dropping temperatures and strong winds. The entire area around Silver Bowl, including warehouses, material yards, side roads, and highway exits, had been thoroughly scanned. The results were noted briefly in the report. No signs of departure, no vehicle, no related evidence. The victim may not have left the construction area. At home, Melissa maintained the habit of brewing coffee for two, placing an extra cup at Daniel's usual spot. She whispered to her daughter that maybe he was just somewhere without signal or an unexpected job had kept him from coming home yet. Though the words sounded like reassurance, her eyes still carried a look of unease. Deep down, both mother and daughter knew that Henderson was not a place where someone could vanish without a trace. But while waiting, hope was the only thing they could still cling to. 3 days after the expanded search ended without results, the Henderson Police Department began reviewing the entire file. The compiled report showed no signs of an accident, no physical evidence, no camera footage, and no one had seen Daniel leave the Silver Bowl industrial area. In an internal meeting, the investigators agreed that the case no longer fit the characteristics of a typical missing contact situation. A veteran officer in the group said, "That man didn't just vanish in the middle of an active construction site with his vehicle still there." From that assessment, the hypothesis of possible criminal activity was raised. The lieutenant in charge, Bill Morgan, with over 20 years of experience in civil investigations, was assigned to directly review all statements. He started with those who worked with Daniel on the evening shift when the incident occurred. In the first interview at the construction company, the project manager stated that Daniel was the last to leave the site, according to the electronic time clock. He usually stayed an extra 30 minutes after the workers left to check the warehouse and complete safety reports. None of those present that night saw him exit the gate or heard the sound of a vehicle leaving the area. A worker named Mike Palmer recalled that near the end of the shift, he heard a loud metal clanging sound from the warehouse area, but thought it was equipment falling and didn't check. This statement was recorded, but Morgan noted that the area was exactly where Daniel was last seen. As the employee list was scrutinized further, the name Russ Jones appeared. Russ, 22 years old, was a worker in charge of mixing concrete and on duty during the night shift. According to records, he left the site after 11 p.m., later than most others, but with no specific reason. In the interview, Russ stated that Daniel was working normally that night, with no conflicts with anyone, and he left while Daniel was still in the office. However, the time clock system log showed Russ left the site about 45 minutes later than he reported. When asked about this discrepancy, Russ appeared flustered, saying he might have forgotten the exact time because he was busy cleaning the material area. Morgan did not ask further, but noted in the record, witness shows evasive behavior, uncertain about timeline. Meanwhile, on the family side, police continued to explore Daniel's personal relationships to see if any led to conflicts. From Melissa's account, they learned that Daniel had been tense with Ryan Hale, his daughter Emily's boyfriend. Ryan, 19 years old, lived in a residential area near Las Vegas, had dropped out of school midway, and Daniel had strongly opposed him due to the age difference. A week before Daniel's disappearance, the two reportedly argued over the phone about Ryan frequently meeting Emily without prior notice. Emily confirmed hearing the end of the conversation, in which her father demanded Ryan not come to the house anymore. Morgan recorded this detail and added Ryan Hale's name to the list of people to interrogate. The next day, Morgan and an officer went to meet Ryan at his home. Ryan appeared calm, saying that, on the evening Daniel went missing, he was at home watching TV and did not leave the area. He admitted calling Daniel a few times earlier to explain the misunderstanding, but denied meeting in person. When asked about the exact time of the last call, Ryan said he didn't remember clearly, maybe early evening or a bit later. Police requested to check his phone, but found no data since the device had been replaced a few months prior. Morgan assessed this statement as unverifiable, but not enough for detention. Parallel to the interviews, the technical team reviewed the site map and discovered several areas Daniel usually checked alone at the end of the shift, including the material warehouse where Russ worked. They questioned why Russ stayed late and why the metal clanging sound Mike Palmer heard went unnoticed by others. Morgan ordered investigators to create a detailed timeline based on each person's statement, work hours, departure times, work positions. When cross-referenced, Russ and Mike's timelines had a nearly 1-hour gap that no one could explain. By the 6th day after Daniel's disappearance, the case file had thickened by nearly 50 pages of statements and reports. Though there was no physical evidence yet, Morgan clearly sensed that the story around that night was not as simple as everyone described. In the end-of-day meeting, he noted, statements lack consistency. One employee left later than usual, one heard a strange noise, and one individual had personal conflict with the victim. The report concluded that Daniel Carter's disappearance needed to be shifted to preliminary criminal investigation, with focus on two names marked in red ink in the file: Russ Jones, night shift worker, and Ryan Hale, person with personal ties to the victim's family. In the internal meeting the next morning, Lieutenant Bill Morgan directed a deeper investigation into Ryan Hale, the person considered to have personal conflict with Daniel Carter prior to the disappearance. He ordered the data analysis team to review all of Ryan's calls that week and prepare an official summons for re-interrogation. Police noted that Ryan, 19 years old, lived with his mother in a northern Las Vegas residential area, had studied mechanical engineering but dropped out, and currently worked part-time at an auto garage. When invited to the station, Ryan appeared quite composed, cooperative, but throughout the session, he frequently avoided the investigators' gaze. Morgan began the interrogation by recalling the previous statement. Ryan confirmed the conflict with Daniel over his relationship with Emily. He said Daniel opposed it because he thought he was too much older than his daughter and was often harsh whenever they met. "I know he didn't like me," Ryan said, "but I didn't do anything wrong. We just talked, nothing else." When Morgan asked about the content of the call between them on the evening Daniel went missing, Ryan hesitated, then replied that Mr. Carter had called to warn him, demanding he end contact with Emily. He insisted the call lasted only a few minutes and ended tensely, but denied meeting in person that night. The technical team rechecked Ryan's mobile phone data. The carrier's call log confirmed one outgoing and one incoming call between him and Daniel on the night of the disappearance, around after 9 o'clock, matching the statement timeline. However, due to 2002 technology limitations, the log did not record location positioning or specific coordinates. Police could only determine the call was made from the eastern Las Vegas area, about 25 kilometers from the site. This made the hypothesis of Ryan being at the scene unprovable. Morgan continued questioning Ryan's timeline that night. He stated he finished work at the garage at 7, went home for dinner, then watched TV with his mother until late. When asked to confirm, his mother said she was home but didn't remember exactly when her son left the living room. He went to bed early, around 9:30, she said, while Ryan insisted he stayed up until nearly 11. That time discrepancy was noted in the record, with the assessment cannot be independently verified. Morgan observed that, though the young man spoke calmly, whenever Daniel's name was mentioned, his face tensed and his hands clenched. Police also inquired with Ryan's close friends. One said a few days before Daniel's disappearance, Ryan had complained that he was trying to split us up. Another said Ryan had been annoyed about being banned from Emily's house, but never threatened or mentioned harming anyone. These accounts were not enough for evidence, but helped solidify the view that the relationship between the two men had simmering opposition. Meanwhile, Morgan ordered the investigation team to cross-check Ryan's vehicle movement records. According to registration data, he owned an old red Chevrolet S10 pickup. A few site workers said that on the night of the incident, they saw red vehicle lights passing the side gate area, but didn't remember the license plate. The investigation team searched for tire tracks around the area, but found nothing clear, as most ground was covered by construction vehicles. No surveillance cameras were operating at the time, making vehicle identification impossible. As the interrogation extended to the end of the day, Morgan shifted questions to Emily, asking Ryan about their recent contact level. Ryan said he and Emily talked on the phone that afternoon before Daniel went missing, and she mentioned her father was still angry about their relationship. He said, "I didn't want trouble, so I called to talk to him, but I swear I didn't go meet him." When Morgan asked why he didn't report to police right after hearing about Daniel's disappearance, Ryan replied, "I thought it had nothing to do with me. I only heard from Emily's mom. I was sad but didn't know how to help." Morgan commented in the report that Ryan's statement has logic but lacks reliability. There was no physical evidence proving he was at the scene, nor direct witnesses confirming contact between them on the night Daniel went missing. However, Ryan being the last to communicate with Daniel made him the central point in the investigation direction. After leaving the police station, Ryan was required to temporarily stay in Las Vegas and be ready to cooperate when needed. The next day, Morgan sent an internal memorandum to the command department, recommending that Ryan Hale be added to the person of interest list in the Daniel Carter disappearance case. He argued that the personal conflict, the call that night, and the vagueness in the statement were three factors that needed further monitoring. In the report concluding the personal investigation phase, Morgan wrote, "Insufficient grounds for prosecution, but Hale remains the individual with clear motive and the final link in the chain of events leading to the disappearance. Continued surveillance is needed to determine his actual role." When the file was closed for the day, the suspect list still had only one name circled in red ink: Ryan Hale. After Ryan Hale was placed on the watch list, Lieutenant Bill Morgan returned to the primary investigation direction at the Silver Bowl construction site. He wanted to more thoroughly check details that might have been overlooked during the initial search phase. The next day, Morgan, along with two technical officers, met with the project's chief engineer, Mr. Franklin Boyd, who was responsible for managing the entire construction progress and materials. Boyd had worked in the industry for over 30 years and was known for being meticulous and keeping detailed records. When asked about the concrete pouring schedule in the week Daniel went missing, he flipped through a large notebook, pages marked with red ink, then stopped at Tuesday, the exact day Daniel disappeared. According to the plan, there was only a small batch of concrete in the afternoon for the western foundation area. No additional work was approved after that, Boyd said, emphasizing that the night shift only involved safety checks with no supplementary items. However, when cross-referencing with the supplier's material ledger, Morgan noticed an unusual entry. Additional pour, Zone 14, 2.8 cubic yards. The execution date matched the time of Daniel's disappearance, but the note lacked a signature for confirmation. Morgan asked, and Boyd frowned. Zone 14 is the material dumping area behind the warehouse. I didn't approve any additional pouring, at least not that night. If it really happened, someone did it outside the plan. This information was immediately added to the report. That afternoon, Morgan and the technical team returned to the site to verify the Zone 14 area on the ground. The harsh desert sun reflected off the glaring concrete surface, wind carrying a thin layer of dust covering the ground. They identified the area behind the warehouse, exactly where Daniel was last seen. The concrete layer here looked markedly different from the surroundings, smoother surface, lighter gray, about 10 centimeters thicker than normal. A technician lightly scraped the outer layer with a knife. The interior was still solid, with no signs of cracking or subsidence, indicating it was poured fairly close to the time the project was temporarily halted that month. Morgan noted, surface shows signs of new pouring within 24-36 hours from the disappearance time. Not in the technical plan. The workers on the morning shift confirmed they did not directly pour that section. A worker named Alvarez said that on the night Daniel went missing, the area was still empty, only covered with a green tarp. The next morning, when he arrived, the foundation was fully poured and roped off with warning tape. When asked who was responsible, everyone just said, probably the night shift team. In the records, the only person from the night shift working in that area was Russ Jones. Morgan made no comment, only requesting the technician to accurately measure the thickness and take a small sample from the edge of the slab for hardness testing. Back at the police station, Morgan immediately reported this discovery to his superiors. He proposed requesting a warrant to drill and inspect the new concrete section to rule out the possibility of an object buried underneath. However, the request was delayed. The reason given was that the area had already undergone temporary acceptance by the investor, and any intervention required written permission from the construction company and city authorities. The investor's representative responded that drilling the foundation could affect the load-bearing structure and delay handover progress, so they refused permission until there was reasonable evidence proving criminal elements. Morgan appeared frustrated, but could do nothing more than send a second written request, attaching all data. The irregular concrete pouring schedule, discrepancies in records, and the location matching where the victim was last seen. While awaiting a response, he returned to the site once more with a forensic technician to document the area in detail. Under the lens, the light-colored concrete reflected the harsh sunlight, standing out amid the older surrounding foundation. They remapped and measured, determining the new pour area was nearly 8 square meters, rectangular, located right on the internal path leading to the back of the fence. A few meters away, the old green tarp was still folded in the corner, its edges caked with dried cement dust. No one could explain why this foundation section was hastily done in one unplanned night, and why no supervisor signed off on the materials. Morgan sat in the car, looking at the site map spread on his lap. He drew a red line around Zone 14, then wrote briefly, "This is Daniel's last point," likely directly related to the disappearance time. The report sent up at the end of the day stated clearly, Zone 14 shows signs of unauthorized construction intervention. Abnormally thick concrete layer, matching the area where the victim was last seen. Recommend drilling to check for objects underneath. 2 days later, the official response from the investor arrived. The document stated that the project had completed the acceptance phase and was now under warranty responsibility, and any additional surveying required approval from the city's technical board. Obtaining permission could take months. Morgan read the letter, was silent for a moment, then clipped it back into the file. In his handwritten notes, he wrote a short line that later became a famous memo in Henderson's cold case unit. "Something is under that concrete, but we're not allowed to touch it yet." That afternoon, as he left the site, the sunset slanted across the shiny surface of Zone 14. Morgan stopped, bent down to look for a long while, then turned away. On the file cover, his final handwritten line in the report remained in red ink. New concrete layer abnormally thick. Location matches where Daniel Carter was last seen. Despite the clear suspicions about the new concrete area, the investigation in the following weeks made almost no progress. Lieutenant Bill Morgan continued submitting requests for additional drilling inspections, but every document was delayed for legal and technical reasons. While waiting for approval, he directed investigators to review all material records, transportation invoices, and the list of employees present during the night shift when Daniel went missing. They hoped to find some match, a purchase order, a handover receipt, or at least a witness to the additional pouring. But the results remained empty. Suppliers said there were no requests beyond the signed plan. The company's material transport tracking log also recorded no unusual shipments at that time. Morgan believed it was possible the workers used leftover concrete from a previous batch, but the silent execution, and no one taking responsibility, left him puzzled. Additional interviews with former site workers also yielded no new information. Russ Jones, the night shift worker previously mentioned, stuck to his statement that he left the site on time and did not see Daniel after the shift ended. When asked about the Zone 14 foundation, Russ only said briefly that he didn't know when that area was poured and had no related duties. Morgan noted the repetition and gaps in the account, but found no evidence to force further disclosure. The investigation team also tried re-verifying the connection to Ryan Hale. There was no trace of Ryan returning to the site or contacting anyone at the construction company after the disappearance. His mobile phone had no remaining data, and neighbors provided no useful information. Every hypothesis led to a dead end. Either Daniel left alone and had an accident elsewhere, or he was harmed within the site perimeter. But there was no evidence to prove it. In the internal report, early December, Morgan wrote, "No direct signs of crime, no new witnesses, no physical data. Case status, stalled." He described the Silver Bowl site as a maze of unconfirmed hypotheses. Subsequent searches, including checking temporary fenced areas and old material dumps, also yielded no results. The concrete in Zone 14 remained untouched, marked by faint paint lines that only the investigation team knew the meaning of. Each time he returned to the site, Morgan would stand silently in front of the area for a long while, but he understood that without official orders, he could not take another step. By year's end, media attention gradually faded. Henderson was a growing city, with dozens of industrial projects sprouting monthly. A missing engineer's case was quickly overshadowed by other news. The Carter family occasionally called the police station for updates, and each time, Morgan could only say the investigation was being maintained at open monitoring level. He knew that was just administrative speak, to avoid admitting they had run out of leads. On December 20th, 2002, after a final review of all documents, Morgan signed the memo to change the file status. The bold line on the first page, "Inactive. Missing person unresolved." The collected evidence, including scene photos, site diagrams, and a small concrete sample from the edge of Zone 14, was sealed and stored in the Henderson Police Department's evidence vault. The file numbered 09, CAR, NV 02, was placed in the cold case unit's storage drawer. That evening, as he left the office, Morgan glanced at the bulletin board in the hallway, where the list of unresolved missing persons cases for the year was posted. Daniel Carter's name sat between two other cases, marked by a small yellow tag. He paused for a few seconds, then turned off the lights and went home. In his personal notebook, the last page of that year had only a brief pencil note: "No more traces to follow." Henderson returned to its daily rhythm, and the Silver Bowl disappearance gradually gathered dust in the metal file cabinets of the police department. 16 years passed since the file coded 09, CAR, NV 02, was placed in the Henderson Police Department's storage drawer. The city had changed much. From a sparsely populated suburb, Henderson became a bustling urban area, old industrial zones successively cleared for new commercial projects. The Silver Bowl Industrial Park, once an unfinished project in the desert in 2002, now only had a few old warehouses left, walls mottled and concrete foundations cracked. In early summer 2018, when the Sunridge Logistics Center project was approved, the first bulldozers entered the area for demolition. Amid the roaring engines and thick dust, no one remembered that this was once the site tied to an unsolved disappearance. On the morning of June 12, the Henderson demolition crew began breaking up the foundation behind the old warehouse area, marked on the old map as Zone 14. As the concrete cutter operated, one of the workers, Miguel Rojas, noticed that the slab here was unusually thick compared to other sections. The drill bit produced a strange sharp sound, not the even hollow echo typically heard. After separating a large concrete chunk, they discovered a small void underneath, mixed with debris. Miguel bent down with a flashlight and saw something glinting like metal, along with a white piece protruding from the soil layer. He signaled to stop the machine, then used a small shovel to push the sand aside. A curved bone segment, about the length of a hand, became clearly visible in the light. The site foreman immediately sealed off the area and called to report to the authorities as per labor safety regulations. Just over an hour later, Henderson police arrived, setting up barriers and ordering all activities to halt. Forensic technicians carefully excavated the remaining foundation layer. Beneath the concrete, they found more bone fragments, a piece of old dark blue fabric, and a rusted metal bar appearing to be a section of industrial steel rod. All discovered items were placed in sealed bags and assigned temporary evidence codes. In the initial report, the officer in charge of the scene noted discovery of suspected adult male human bones. Surrounding area shows signs of supplementary concrete pouring and metal object. When the information reached headquarters, some veteran officers recognized the Silver Bowl Industrial Park address. They checked the archives and located File 09, Car NV02, the disappearance of engineer Daniel Carter. The thin file, with yellowed paper, still bore the red ink mark, inactive, missing person unresolved. A lieutenant in the unit commented, "If these are human bones, we may have touched something buried long ago." The scene report was completed that afternoon and then forwarded to the city's Criminal Investigation Department. Due to the case being over 15 years old and involving suspected criminal elements, Henderson police decided to transfer the entire file to the Cold Case Division of the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department for reevaluation. The decision was signed that night, accompanied by the evidence list: 7 bone fragments, 1 metal bar, 1 fabric scrap, and 2 concrete samples. All evidence was sealed and transported to the Central Forensics Lab in Las Vegas. The next morning, as the sun rose over the Nevada desert, the Silver Bowl industrial area was completely sealed off. Yellow paint lines marked the excavation area in a rectangle, matching the location called Zone 14 in the 2002 diagram. The investigators observed quietly. No one spoke it aloud, but all understood that what was found could reopen one of Henderson's longest recorded missing persons cases. In the criminal team's duty log that day, the final note was brief: possible human remains recovered, Silver Bowl site. The evidence collected from the Silver Bowl industrial area was transferred to the LVMPD forensic lab the following day. There, Dr. Rebecca Lynn, a forensic anthropologist, along with technicians, began analyzing each bone sample and accompanying materials. After cleaning with specialized solutions, they confirmed all bone fragments belonged to an adult human skeleton. Based on femur length, joint structure, and tooth enamel wear, the forensics team concluded the victim was male, aged approximately 38 to 45, matching the physical description in engineer Daniel Carter's missing person file from 2002. However, for exact identification, DNA testing from remaining bone marrow was required. The DNA extraction process was conducted in the criminal biology lab. Since the bones had been buried under concrete for over 15 years, genetic material recovery was challenging. Specialists used advanced molecular amplification techniques, isolating mitochondrial DNA from the marrow and comparing it to the national database. The comparison sample came from Nevada's missing persons file, hair provided by Daniel's ex-wife in 2002, when the case was opened. After nearly 2 weeks of processing and matching, results showed a 99.98% DNA match, confirming the remains were those of Daniel Carter, the Silver Bowl Industrial Park site supervisor. Parallel to identification, the forensics team conducted a technical autopsy to determine cause of death. On the excavated skull fragment, they found a clear fracture line extending from the right temple to the occiput. The break edges were sharp, with no signs of bone healing, indicating the injury occurred immediately before or at the time of death. Microscopic analysis revealed the fracture resulted from a strong impact by a round cross-section object struck from the right side downward, consistent with direct metal blunt force trauma. No cutting or piercing marks ruled out sharp weapon attack. The experts concluded the cause of death was severe cranial trauma from blunt force impact. The surrounding evidence, including the dark blue fabric piece, rusted metal bar and concrete fragments, was sent for further analysis. Fabric fiber results showed it was industrial protective clothing, similar to the engineer uniforms used by Daniel's company in the early 2000s. The metal, after rust removal, was identified as a 2-inch diameter round steel construction rod with a slightly bent end. Micro traces of red on the edge were confirmed as human blood, heavily degraded but matching the victim's blood type. On the concrete fragments encasing the remains, analysts found inconsistent mixing between old and new cement, indicating the concrete was poured supplementarily after the body was placed in the pit, not during initial construction. The comprehensive forensics report, completed on July 2, 2018, stated, victim Daniel Carter's body was discovered beneath the Zone 14 concrete layer in a sideways position with arms folded against the chest. Based on foundation structure and surrounding samples, burial occurred within 24 to 48 hours after death. No signs of subsequent body movement. The report was sent to the LVMPD Criminal Investigation Bureau with a recommendation to reopen the case as active with suspected homicide and body concealment. When the news was announced, Daniel Carter's file was quickly retrieved from storage. The cover had yellowed, but the line inactive, missing person unresolved, remained clear. A new sheet was clipped to the front with bold print, reopened July 2018, case reference 09, CAR, NV, 02. That afternoon, Henderson police held an interagency meeting with the Cold Case Division to hand over all old data, including scene maps, witness statements, and technical documents related to Zone 14. Outside the meeting room, Las Vegas summer sunlight streamed through the glass, illuminating the faded site map where Morgan had once circled Zone 14 in red. Now his old report note, "Something is under that concrete, but we're not allowed to touch it yet," had become reality. Daniel Carter's body had finally been found, and with it, the 16-year disappearance was officially classified as a criminal case. File 09, CAR, NV, 02 was reopened. With new status, active investigation, homicide suspected. Lieutenant Lisa Morano, from LVMPD's Cold Case Division, was assigned to lead the Daniel Carter case immediately after DNA results were confirmed. She was a veteran investigator specializing in unresolved cases from the early 1990s, known for her meticulous style and ability to reconstruct scenes from old documents. When File 09, CAR, NV, 02 arrived at her desk, Lisa noted it was thinner than most cases she handled, only about 30 pages, yellowed paper, ink faded in places. The cover still bore the Henderson Police Department stamp and the red printed inactive, missing person unresolved. On the first morning, Lisa spent the entire time rereading all documents from the beginning. The 2002 opening report described Daniel Carter as the Silver Bowl Industrial Park site supervisor, missing on the night of September 3rd. Notes showed the initial investigation followed procedure but stopped at primary data collection. What caught Lisa's attention was the scene photos and the report by the detective in charge at the time, Detective Bill Morgan. On the last page of the site survey memo, she found a nearly faded handwritten note in red ink. New concrete layer abnormally thick, location matches where Carter was last seen. Next to it was a small diagram marking Zone 14, identical to the body's discovery site. It felt like time had reversed. Lisa paused reading and opened the attached black and white photos. The 2002 images showed the warehouse, internal access road, and material dumping area behind, all exactly at Zone 14. In the photos, the lighter-colored foundation stood out from surroundings, proving Morgan's team had noticed the difference but was denied access. Lisa turned to the next page, the drilling request rejected by the investor, citing project acceptance. The report's final line read, "Possible relation to disappearance, but insufficient grounds for warrant." She closed the file, thinking to herself, he saw it from the start. That afternoon, Lisa located Bill Morgan's contact through old personnel files. He had retired in 2010 and now lived in Boulder City, about an hour's drive from Las Vegas. She called, introducing herself and her unit. On the other end, Morgan's voice was slow but firm. "I knew you'd call one day. They found him, didn't they?" Lisa confirmed. After a few seconds of silence, he added, "If the body's in the concrete, there's no doubt anymore." I requested drilling right then. They arranged to meet the next morning at LVMPD headquarters. When Morgan entered the office, he walked with a stoop, hair snow white, but carried the same old leather briefcase. He opened it and pulled out his 2002 notebook, cover worn, spine torn. Between the yellowed pages were detailed notes on the Silver Bowl site, area diagrams, floor plans, and a few small film photos from the era. Lisa spread the old project map on the table. The two examined the red markings around Zone 14. Morgan pointed, "We discovered this concrete was poured last. Not in the construction plan, and no one admitted doing it. When I requested drilling, they said no, project already accepted. I knew something was wrong, but had no evidence to proceed." Lisa asked about the night shift workers. Morgan recalled immediately, one named Russ Jones, material dumping area worker, and the young man Ryan Hale, Carter's daughter's boyfriend. Both were interviewed, but back then, no evidence against them. He opened the notebook to the last page, a handwritten pencil line, shaky but legible. "Something is under that concrete, but we're not allowed to touch it yet." Lisa reread it, feeling it matched her own impression from the scene photos. They spent the afternoon reviewing every file section. Morgan detailed the administrative obstacles, investor indifference, and pressure to close the case without crime evidence. He mentioned collecting edge concrete samples, but results then showed no abnormality. Lisa noted everything and requested the new forensics team re-extract those samples for comparison with the excavated concrete. Every detail was carefully cross-checked for consistency between the old report and the 2018 scene. As the meeting ended, Lisa printed two maps, one from 2002 and one current, placing them side by side. The body's location matched Morgan's prior marking exactly. He stared at the maps for a long while, then said softly, "I only regret not digging that day." Lisa didn't reply, just nodded silently. Before leaving, she shook his hand, saying his persistence made it possible to find the truth now. In the meeting minutes, Lisa wrote, "Confirmed, 2002 note by Detective Bill Morgan on unplanned additional concrete pouring is completely accurate. Need to reevaluate all original file data to determine responsibility and possible involvement of individuals listed in the night shift roster." As Morgan left headquarters, Lisa watched him go, then returned to her desk and opened the file once more. Amid the yellowed pages, the black and white photo of the warehouse area remained, with a small red-circled square directly over Zone 14. Now, after 16 years, that square was no longer a guess. It was exactly where Daniel Carter had been found, and with the new evidence in hand, the Silver Bowl case officially entered a comprehensive re-evaluation phase. After the meeting with Bill Morgan, Lieutenant Lisa Morano returned to her office with the old file and a series of new notes. Forensic evidence had confirmed Daniel Carter died the night he went missing, and what Morgan had preserved from 2002 now became the most critical lead. Lisa began narrowing down individuals mentioned in the original file, focusing on two names repeated across multiple records: Russ Jones, the night shift worker in charge of the material dumping area, and Ryan Hale, the victim's daughter's boyfriend, who had a personal conflict with Daniel. Both had been interviewed but released for lack of evidence. Now, with the body discovered right in Zone 14, where Russ worked, Lisa knew she had to start over with them. The first step was reviewing administrative documents related to the construction project. She requested the Henderson Building Department archives to extract all material records, invoices, and concrete pour logs from early September 2002. Thick files arrived at her office that week, many pages yellowed, written in ballpoint pen with faded stamps. As Lisa reviewed them, most matched the standard construction plan, except for one small handwritten entry, March 9, 2002. Additional pour, 2.8 cubic yards, requested by RJ. The initials RJ made Lisa stop immediately. She compared the handwriting to Russ Jones's signature in the construction company's personnel file, and the similarity was clear. The elongated J at the end, and the rightward slant, matched perfectly. Checking further delivery receipts, she found an order from Nevada Ready Mix, dated 22/35 on September 3, 2002. The exact night Daniel disappeared. In the notes, the recipient was listed as Russ. The small concrete batch was not in the official plan, and the purpose was simply stated, Supplement Warehouse Foundation. Lisa printed all the documents and clipped them into a separate file. This was the first evidence that the additional pour had actually occurred, and was executed by Russ. She contacted the supplier to verify the signature on the invoice. The records manager confirmed the handwriting matched the construction company employee at the time, and stated, "We only deliver when someone from the site signs for it." That night, the truck arrived on time and returned after about 40 minutes. That timeline perfectly matched the gap Morgan had suspected in Russ's night shift schedule. From the new data, Lisa compiled a list of questions and began verifying Russ Jones's current whereabouts. The system showed he left Henderson in 2004, moving to Pahrump, over 60 miles from Las Vegas. Russ now worked for a small materials company, was married, and had 2 children. After obtaining approval for a witness summons, Lisa and an investigator drove to Pahrump on Thursday morning. Russ's house was in a quiet residential area, with faded roof tiles and a company pickup parked out front. When Lisa introduced herself and showed her badge, Russ momentarily froze. He immediately recognized the topic when he heard Daniel Carter's name. The interview was conducted at the local police station. Russ appeared cooperative but cautious, with a hoarse voice and eyes avoiding direct contact. Lisa began by asking about his time working at the Silver Bowl site. Russ said he was only there a few months, handling material mixing and night shift warehouse cleanup. When asked about the night of September 3, 2002, he replied, "I remember we just cleaned up and locked the equipment. I left before midnight." Lisa placed a copy of the concrete invoice with the RJ signature in front of him and asked if it was his handwriting. Russ looked at the paper, hesitated for a few seconds, then said, "It looks similar, but I don't remember signing it. It could be a wrong delivery or someone using my name." Lisa kept her tone calm. "According to records, you were the only one in charge of the dumping area that night. This batch was delivered after 10:30. Can you explain why there was an order outside the plan?" Russ fell silent, eyes on the table. After a moment, he said quietly, "Maybe Daniel requested it. He was the supervisor. If he wanted to test the foundation or fix something, we just followed." Lisa recorded the statement, but knew internally that this explanation didn't fit, because by that time Daniel was already missing and couldn't approve any orders. When the interview ended, Russ was allowed to go home but had to commit to further cooperation. Lisa returned to her office, reorganized the file, and compared the new data with Morgan's 2002 records. Everything aligned: the irregular concrete batch, Zone 14 location, the night shift time gap, and Russ Jones's name. In the report sent to superiors that day, she wrote, "Based on the original file and newly collected administrative documents, there is sufficient basis to confirm Russ Jones requested and supervised the supplementary concrete pour on the night of the victim's disappearance. Recommend continued investigation into the connection between Jones and Ryan Hale, who had personal conflict with the victim." On Lisa's desk, two photos sat side by side, one of Zone 14 from the 2018 scene, the other Morgan's original 2002 map. Both matched down to the meter. In the dim lamplight, she circled two names in red on the file, Russ Jones and Ryan Hale, marking them with a brief note: primary suspects under review. 2 days after the initial interview, Lieutenant Lisa Morano received a call from Pahrump Police. Russ Jones had voluntarily contacted them, saying he wanted to clarify a few things about the night of September 3, 2002. She immediately arranged a second trip, this time bringing copies of the material records and signature comparisons for direct confrontation. The meeting took place early morning at the local station, in a small room with a wooden table, 2 chairs, and a recorder. Russ looked more tired than before, guarded but no longer pretending to be nonchalant. He said that after going home, he thought it over and decided to tell everything, because some things have haunted me too long. Lisa began with the familiar question, "Do you confirm that you were the one who requested the extra concrete that night?" Russ looked at the paper with the RJ signature and nodded slowly. "Yes, that's my handwriting, but I didn't do it on my own. Ryan asked me to." Lisa took notes and continued, "Ryan Hale, was he at the site that night?" Russ swallowed, voice hoarse. "Yes. He arrived around 9. I was surprised, because he didn't work there, but he said he was meeting Mr. Carter." Russ recounted that the shift ended as usual. Daniel was still in the office, and he was cleaning the material area behind the warehouse. Around 9, he saw a red pickup stop at the side gate, lights still on. The driver was Ryan Hale. He went straight in, no check-in. I asked, and he said he had an appointment with Mr. Carter. I didn't pay much attention, thinking it was work-related. Afterward, Russ continued working. About half an hour later, he heard a loud metal clang from the warehouse area, then silence. When he went to check, the lights were off. No one there. Daniel's field office door was ajar, but dark. Around 10, Ryan reappeared, walking from the warehouse toward him, looking rushed. Russ said, "He said a foundation section was damaged and asked me to help repair it quickly for morning handover." He said Mr. Carter had agreed. I thought it was odd, but he said it was minor, just a few buckets of ready mix. Russ hesitated, but eventually agreed to call a familiar supplier and order a small batch, as in the invoice. When the concrete truck arrived, Ryan had already prepared the area, Zone 14, where Daniel usually did final checks. I asked if he was sure, since the area wasn't marked for acceptance. He just said, "Do it, I'll take responsibility." According to Russ, the two began pouring around 11. He adjusted the chute, while Ryan held a flashlight over the pit. At that point, Russ noticed the old foundation had been dug shallower than usual, with sand and fabric scraps underneath. I thought they were fixing a pipe or something, didn't look closely. I just did the surface, smoothed it, and roped it off. After finishing, Ryan told me to keep quiet because it was internal. Don't tell anyone. When Lisa asked if Russ saw Daniel again after Ryan arrived, he shook his head. No. The last time was when he was in the office before Ryan showed up. Lisa let him pause, then reopened the notes. Every detail matched old data: the small concrete batch, delivery time, Zone 14, and the metal clang another worker mentioned in 2002. She asked, "Do you know why Ryan wanted to pour concrete that night? Was anyone else there?" Russ replied, "No, just us two. He said it had to be fixed urgently for morning inspection. He seemed tense, sweating. After we finished, he left fast." Lisa asked if Russ suspected anything. He was silent for a long time, then said softly, "I couldn't figure it out. The next morning I heard Mr. Carter was missing, and the area was already roped off. I meant to tell, but was afraid I'd be blamed for signing the materials. I thought, if I spoke, they'd think I was an accomplice." The answer left the room silent. Lisa understood this statement could be the case's turning point, but she still had to ensure its authenticity. She had Russ sign the statement confirming his testimony and agreed a fingerprint comparison with evidence from the scene. Russ complied, his face relieved, as if a burden had lifted. "I don't know what happened to him," he said, "but I think Ryan used the foundation repair excuse to cover something." Leaving the interview room, Lisa paused to reread the entire transcript. The timelines in Russ's statement perfectly matched: collected data, concrete delivered at 22:35, Zone 14, and the unplanned pour. For the first time in 16 years, the file had a unified explanation for the abnormally thick concrete. In the internal report sent to headquarters, Lisa wrote, "Witness Russ Jones stated he performed the supplementary concrete pour at Ryan Hale's request on the night of the victim's disappearance. Purpose unclear, but grounds to suspect concealment. Need to expand investigation into Ryan Hale's actions between 21 o'clock and 23:30 on September 3, 2002. Leaving the Pahrump station, Lisa looked out at the sun-drenched road, desert dust swirling in the hot wind. In her mind echoed one line from Russ, "I don't know what they did under that concrete, but the next morning it was fully poured." In Henderson, that line would soon be added to File 09, Car Send V. 02 as the final piece in the chain of evidence leading to a new investigative direction. Ryan Hale, the last person to see Daniel Carter alive. After completing the interview with Russ Jones, Lieutenant Lisa Morano returned to Las Vegas that night. She knew this testimony, though critical, still needed physical corroboration. At LVMPD headquarters, the forensic technicians had finished the initial phase of analyzing evidence from the excavation: the dark blue fabric scrap, the rusted steel rod, and dried blood on the concrete. All were processed in the Central DNA Lab under national standards. Lisa requested parallel analysis in two directions: comparison with victim Daniel Carter's DNA and searching for traces of any other involved individual. Dr. Rebecca Lynn, who had identified Daniel's remains, reported that the team successfully extracted genetic traces from both main items. The first sample, dried blood on the steel rod, contained a mixture of two individuals' DNA, one matching Daniel Carter perfectly, the other unidentified male DNA. The second sample, skin cells on the fabric stuck to concrete, did not belong to the victim. After processing and coding, the unknown DNA was entered into CODIS, the U.S. National Criminal DNA Database. 3 days later, results came back. The system flagged partial match, high confidence, with a profile for Ryan Hale, recorded in Nevada's criminal database in 2016 for a bar fight in North Las Vegas. The DNA from the evidence matched Ryan's at 99.96%, including identical marker sequences at 14 identification loci. The result was confirmed by an independent lab in Reno, eliminating any chance of coincidence. Lisa read the report, her heart pounding. 16 years later, they finally had direct biological evidence linking Ryan Hale to the scene where Daniel Carter was killed. That afternoon, she held an emergency meeting with the investigation team. All evidence was presented sequentially: Russ Jones's statement, the September 3, 2002 concrete invoice, and the DNA results. Analysts created a timeline clearly showing the connection between Ryan, the victim, and Zone 14. According to the timeline, Daniel disappeared between 21 o'clock, 22 o'clock, around 22:30. Russ received the concrete order by 23 o'clock. The area had a new foundation layer, perfectly matching Ryan's presence at the site. Lisa concluded, This is no longer indirect suspicion. Ryan Hale's DNA is on the murder weapon buried with the body. This is direct criminal evidence. He immediately drafted a report requesting an arrest warrant. In the document submitted to Clark County Court, Lisa detailed, based on DNA analysis results confirmed by the LVMPD Criminal Laboratory and the Nevada State Forensic Lab, there is sufficient basis to determine Ryan Hale's direct involvement in Daniel Carter's death. Evidence Item 07 bears the suspect's and victim's DNA. Timestamps and witness Russ Jones's statement reinforce the hypothesis that Hale was at the scene during the victim's time of death. The report included all supporting documents, scene photos, and genetic analysis charts. The next morning, District Judge Elaine Porter signed approval for arrest warrant number 2018 HND 3947, authorizing LVMPD to pursue Ryan Hale statewide. The task force was mobilized immediately. According to the latest information, Ryan Hale had left Las Vegas that night, driving a red truck southward. The pursuit lasted over 6 hours on the interstate, ending when Arizona police intercepted his vehicle at a small gas station on the outskirts of Tucson. Ryan did not resist, only asking briefly, "Where are you taking me?" Upon hearing the arrest warrant read for first-degree murder and concealment of a body, he bowed his head and said nothing more. That afternoon, he was extradited to Las Vegas on a special flight under the supervision of 2 criminal officers. In the cold case division interrogation room, Ryan was seated, hands still cuffed. Lieutenant Lisa Morano sat across from him, with a thick file on the table along with newly printed scene photos. The Zone 14 concrete area, the steel rod, the fabric scrap, and DNA analysis images. After reading the Miranda rights, Lisa began, "You know why you're here, right?" Ryan glanced at the photos and said softly, "Because of Mr. Carter." His voice lacked defiance, only tinged with fatigue. Lisa asked directly, "What did you do on the night of September 3rd, 2002? At first, Ryan denied it. He said he only went to the site to explain things to Daniel because he wanted him to ease up on the tension about his relationship with Emily. "I didn't go to start trouble," he insisted, "just to talk." According to his statement, the conversation took place in Daniel's temporary office. They started speaking quietly, then voices rose. Daniel accused Ryan of ruining his daughter's future, while Ryan said he was too controlling. "He came at me, pushed me out the door," he recounted. "I reflexively pushed back. He slipped, fell, and hit his head on the table edge." Lisa kept a calm expression, but in her mind recalled the forensic conclusion: the fatal injury was from direct blunt force by a round object, not hitting a table. She placed the photo of the steel rod in front of him. "So where did this come from?" Ryan stared at the photo for a long time. He said quietly, "It was in the office corner, used for adjusting steel frames. I didn't mean to use it, it was just when he lunged at me, I grabbed it reflexively. I didn't think I'd hit that hard." The statement silenced the room. Lisa asked, "How many times did you hit him?" Ryan replied after a few seconds, "1, maybe 2. Then he fell. I checked his pulse, nothing. I panicked." He bowed his head, hands clenched, voice choking. "I didn't mean to kill him. I just lost control. I was scared." Afterward, Ryan said he ran to the warehouse area and met Russ Jones, who was still cleaning materials. "I told Russ to help me." He asked what happened. "I said there was an accident. I begged him not to tell anyone. I'd handle everything." Russ was afraid of getting involved, so he stayed quiet. He described in detail how the two moved the body using a green tarp to wrap it, dragging it to the material dumping area behind the warehouse, Zone 14. He told Russ to prepare concrete to cover the damaged foundation. Lisa interrupted. "You say it was an accident, so why hide the body?" Ryan was silent for a long time, then said, "Because I knew no one would believe me. He was respected, and I was just an unemployed guy dating his daughter. Everyone would think I did it on purpose." According to him, The concrete pouring happened late that night. Russ operated the machine, while he held the light and supervised. When the final concrete layer covered it, Ryan said he couldn't look anymore. He asked Russ to keep quiet and said he'd handle the supplier. The next day, he returned to the site early, taped warning bands around the area, pretending it was a technical test section. When the company accepted it, no one asked questions. "I thought it was over," he said softly. "But every time I passed that spot, I still heard the heavy concrete under my feet." Lisa had him sign to confirm the statement and asked further if Russ knew exactly what was happening. Ryan insisted Russ didn't know it was a body. He said, "I told him it was a broken pipe, needed covering to avoid accidents. He just did the mixing, didn't ask more." However, Lisa noted this contradicted Russ's statement that the pit was already dug with strange objects underneath. She jotted it down for cross-checking, but didn't interrupt. Ryan continued, "I left Nevada a few years later, trying to forget. When I heard the project was being demolished, I knew it was only a matter of time." In the final part of the interrogation, Lisa read the DNA results aloud. "The genetic sample on the steel rod matches you. Anything else to say?" Ryan sighed, nodded slightly. "No need to test more. It was my fault. I lost control. But I didn't plan to kill him. I just wanted him to leave us alone." He asked to send a message to Emily, but Lisa refused, saying all information would go through his lawyer. The interrogation lasted nearly 4 hours, ending when Ryan signed the transcript and was transferred to Clark County Central Detention. In the report, Lisa wrote, "Suspect admitted to altercation leading to victim Daniel Carter's death and confessed to performing concrete pour with Russ Jones to conceal the body. Voluntary statement, recorded and signed." Leaving the interrogation room, she paused to look through the one-way mirror. Ryan hung his head, hands in front, eyes empty. He no longer had the arrogance of the young man who once challenged his girlfriend's father's authority. Only a middle-aged man remained, weary, imprisoned by his own actions for 16 years. Lisa closed the file, adding a final line in red pen, "Confession recorded, accidental claim unsubstantiated." The Silver Bowl case, from a vague missing person file, had become an official confession, etched in the handwriting of the one who thought he would never be found. 2 days after Ryan Hale's confession, Lieutenant Lisa Morano decided to summon Russ Jones once more for statement cross-verification. When Parham police brought him to Las Vegas, Russ looked entirely different from the first meeting, face weary, posture hunched, eyes resigned. In the interrogation room, Lisa placed Ryan's statement copy in front of him, along with scene photos and DNA evidence. "Ryan told everything," she said calmly. "We want to hear your side. If your statement matches, it will be considered accurately." Russ was silent for a long time, then nodded. "I'll talk. I've kept this quiet too long." He began recounting from the night of September 3, 2002, nearly every detail matching what Ryan had stated. He was cleaning materials behind the warehouse when he heard arguing in the field office. Daniel's voice was loud, mixed with one he quickly recognized as Ryan, the young man Daniel had forbidden from seeing his daughter. "I remember clearly because Mr. Carter rarely raised his voice," Russ said. He was calm, while the kid sounded like he was about to fight. Then suddenly, a loud noise, metal hitting the floor, followed by silence. He started to run over, but stopped, thinking it was personal. About 10 minutes later, Ryan appeared in the warehouse area, face pale, shirt dusty with what looked like blood streaks. He said, "I need your help. Mr. Carter fell, might be dead." I froze, couldn't believe it. He grabbed my arm, led me to the office. Mr. Carter was lying on his side by the desk, head bleeding. I checked his wrist, no pulse. Ryan kept saying it was an accident, that he fell on his own. He was panicking, saying we had to do something before anyone found out. Russ paused, hands clenched. "I know I should have called police, but I was scared. I was young, needed the job. If involved, I'd lose everything." According to Russ, Ryan said they had to handle it that night. He pulled a green tarp from the warehouse, told him to help wrap the body. I didn't dare look. Russ recounted. Just followed. He said, "Take it out back to the unfinished concrete area." He said, "It was temporary until morning, when the company handles it." But when we got there, he changed his mind. He said he'd take care of it, just needed me to help pour concrete to cover the damaged foundation. Russ admitted he called the supplier for the concrete batch, but had no idea of the true purpose. "I thought he wanted to fill a dug spot to prevent slips. I never imagined he was burying a body." Russ described the pouring process identically to Ryan's account. The truck arrived near 11 p.m. They worked quickly, almost silently. He held the light, I controlled the chute. When the concrete filled up, he told me to stop. I asked if he was sure. He just said, "Done, no one will know." Afterward, Ryan paid the driver, told him to keep quiet because it was a foundation test. They stayed another half hour to smooth the surface, then left in different directions. Russ remembered not sleeping that night. The next morning at the site, the area was already roped off. I knew right away he wasn't planning to report anything. I was scared, but also knew if I spoke, I'd be seen as an accomplice. Lisa asked, "Did you ever go back to that area?" Russ shook his head. "No. I quit the next week. I couldn't stand passing it." She continued, "Did you receive money or any benefit from Ryan?" He replied, "No. Just silence. He asked me to keep the secret and promised he'd handle it for both of us. But then he disappeared, and I never heard from him again." Lisa turned on the recorder, asked one final time, "Do you confirm Daniel Carter died in the site office after being pushed by Ryan Hale?" Russ nodded, voice low but firm, "Yes. I saw he wasn't breathing. It was an accident, but Ryan made it worse by trying to hide it." He signed the statement, handwriting shaky but clear. When the interrogation ended, Lisa stepped out with the legal officer. All details now aligned, 2 matching statements, DNA evidence, authenticated items. The final picture of the night of September 3, 2002, was clear. An argument turning into a scuffle, instant death, and fear leading 2 young men to hide the crime under concrete. That afternoon, at the Clark County Prosecutor's Office, the file moved to the criminal indictment completion phase. Based on physical evidence, forensic results, and confessions from both suspects, Prosecutor Evan Blake approved charging Ryan Hale with first-degree murder and body concealment, and Russ Jones with accessory to evidence concealment and obstruction of investigation. In the 20-page indictment, the opening line read, "Silver Bowl case. Victim Daniel Carter, missing 2002, determined to be murdered. Concealment act performed at Silver Bowl Industrial Park, Henderson, Nevada." At the end of the day, Lisa signed the investigation completion confirmation. Leaving the office, she paused in the long hallway, looking at the old caseboard now, with a red, "Solved, Homicide Confirmed" label. Below, a small handwritten note by her, Russ Jones corroborated Hale's statement. Daniel Carter died instantly after the altercation. After 16 years, the disappearance was no longer a mystery, but a painful truth proven by the statements of those who last witnessed that night. After completing the preliminary indictment, the Cold Case Division transferred all remaining evidence to the Nevada State Specialized Forensic Lab for final analysis. Lieutenant Lisa Morano knew this round's results would be crucial to solidify the criminal charges, no longer relying solely on statements. For 16 years, hypotheses about Daniel Carter's case revolved around accident, but she needed a definitive, scientific, undeniable answer. On August 5, 2018, the expert team led by Dr. Rebecca Lynn began the second phase forensic testing series. The victim's skeleton, steel rod, concrete fragments, and remaining tissue samples were processed in absolute sterile conditions. Each sample was 3D CT scanned to determine damage extent and impact direction. When the complete model appeared on screen, the skull fracture was stark, an arc-shaped break from the right temple to the crown, with a central depression about 3 centimeters deep, typical of direct heavy blunt force strike. Rebecca explained in the report, injury shape inconsistent with free fall, fracture angle and depth, indicate the injuring object was swung from above, with minimum force equivalent to 50-60 newtons, matching an adult arm's full weight strike. Symmetrical brake structure rules out victim self-fall or random hard object collision. She presented under X-ray, pointing to microfractures radiating from the impact point across the skull, proving the first strike was sufficient for instant death. The second analysis part focused on the steel rod, evidence item 07. The team used bioluminescent techniques to detect remaining blood and fingerprints. Under blue light, the rod showed two distinct areas, one with heavy blood matching Daniel Carter's DNA, and a fainter area with mixed DNA from two males. Cross-referencing the national database confirmed one as Ryan Hale, the recently arrested suspect. In-depth analysis showed Ryan's DNA concentrated around the handle, proving he directly gripped the rod during the act, not from cross-contamination or later accidental touch. Meanwhile, the remaining soft tissue samples around the victim's neck and arms were also scanned for signs of biological reaction. The results revealed small bruises and muscle tears consistent with a defensive mechanism, a typical victim response when attempting to shield themselves. The report clearly stated, the first blow struck the right forehead, causing the victim to fall backward, with the left arm raised in defense, resulting in a muscle tear in the forearm. Subsequently, the injury-causing object impacted once more on the occipital region, causing skull fracture and instant death at the scene. Thus, the expert conclusion confirmed at least two consecutive blows, completely contradicting Ryan's statement of fall due to collision. The expert team also analyzed the concrete material taken from around the body. Traces showed the top cement layer distinctly differed in moisture and hardness, proving it was poured after the victim had died. In the technical narrative, Rebecca wrote, "The mixture structure is inhomogeneous with large air bubbles, consistent with a rushed pouring process not following standard construction procedures. The concrete composition contained sand particles from the material storage area, matching the location of Zone 14, where witness Russ Jones once worked. This confirmed all of Russ's testimony about pouring the additional foundation layer with Ryan to conceal the body." When the report was completed, Lisa went directly to the examination room to hear the presentation. Rebecca opened the screen, pointed to the skull CT images, and said, "It couldn't be an accident. Based on the impact angle, the victim was struck from the right, with the perpetrator standing about 50-60 centimeters away at a height equivalent to Hale's. The blow was strong, decisive, and intentional." Lisa nodded, knowing that the answer she had been waiting for was finally clear. 4 days later, the in-depth forensic conclusion was sent to the Clark County Prosecutor's Office. The introduction stated, "Based on morphological analysis, DNA and physical evidence results, the possibility of an accident is completely ruled out. The mechanism of death is determined to be severe brain trauma from direct impact by a blunt object. The steel rod recovered at the scene. Suspect Ryan Hale's DNA is present on the rod handle, matching the sample stored in the 2016 criminal database." This report not only strengthened the murder charge, but also confirmed the Body Concealment Act. At LVMPD headquarters, Lisa printed the report and placed it next to the original case file 09, CAR NV02. Each detail connected into a logical chain: personal conflict, altercation, fatal blow, hastily poured concrete layer. She underlined the final line in the investigation report: "Forensic evidence confirms intentional injury leading to death. Accident ruled out. Solid basis for charging first-degree manslaughter and body concealment." As night fell over Las Vegas, Lisa's office remained lit. On the desk, two photos were placed side by side, one a portrait of Daniel Carter while alive, the other the blood-stained steel rod. She stared at them for a long time, then gently closed the file. After 16 years, the truth had finally been proven by science, leaving no room for excuses about an accident on that fateful night. After receiving the in-depth forensic report, Lieutenant Lisa Morano directed the final step in the investigation phase: digital scene reconstruction, to simulate the entire sequence of events on the night of September 3, 2002. The goal was to present to the prosecutor's office and jury a clear picture based on scientific evidence, eliminating all debate about the accident that Ryan Hale still insisted on. The digital team from LVMPD's Criminal Analysis Unit was mobilized, combining 3D data from skull CT scans, 2018 scene photos, site diagrams, and detailed statements from both Ryan and Russ Jones. The digital lab on the third floor of LVMPD headquarters glowed with screen light. Engineers input data, concrete layers, office door position, desk angle, path to the warehouse area, and Zone 14 behind, where Daniel Carter's body was found. The virtual modeling software rendered a confined space under 40 square meters, dim lighting, dusty floor. A virtual figure representing Daniel was built to his height, weight, and typical work posture as described by colleagues. The second figure was Ryan, about 10 centimeters taller, programmed to move along the blow trajectory determined from the forensic report. As the simulation began, the entire room fell silent. A series of movements was recreated, two people facing each other in the room's center, arguing voices extracted from statements recreated the tense rhythm. The Daniel figure stepped forward. Ryan raised his right hand holding a long object, the simulated steel rod, then swung down at a 45-degree angle. The first blow hit the right temple, causing the Daniel figure to tilt and fall toward the desk. The second followed immediately, striking downward from above onto the occipital region. Sensors on the virtual model lit up red, corresponding to the damage recorded on the actual skull. The software recalculated impact force, displaying 57 newtons, closely matching the forensic report level. Lisa stood behind the glass partition, observing the reconstruction. Every detail matched chillingly. Blow positions, fall direction and distance between the two. There was no doubt, Daniel Carter could not have died by accident. He was struck at least twice, both aimed at the head with force sufficient for instant death. The technical team continued simulating the aftermath. The Ryan figure knelt to check the victim, then pulled a green tarp, data from actual evidence, over the body. A dynamic map simulated the body's movement from the office to Zone 14, 42 meters long, taking about 3 minutes if dragged by hand, matching the time gap in Russ's statement. Next, the 3D model displayed Russ and Ryan pouring concrete. The mixer truck appeared in the exact position from 2002 file photos. Concrete chute lowered into the pit. The cement flow covered the object below, about 10-12 centimeters thick. The program allowed cross-section views, clearly showing differences between new and old concrete layers, along with uneven compression noted by experts. When the software replayed the entire sequence in slow motion, Lisa felt as if she were standing in that night, witnessing the silent crime concealment. The complete reconstruction was saved in 3 versions. One for police files, one for the prosecutor's office, and one backup for court submission. The technical team compiled a 10-minute summary video, combining real images, 3D models, and technical narration. Every detail was cited from authenticated data sources: blow positions, concrete pouring timing, DNA match on the weapon, and movement sequence on the site. It was not just simulation, but complete technical evidence describing the crime. After 3 weeks, the comprehensive scene reconstruction report, Silver Bowl case, was finalized. The conclusion read, based on experimental data, 3D simulation confirms victim Daniel Carter died from 2 consecutive blunt object blows in the temporary office in the warehouse area. After death, the body was moved to Zone 14 and buried under a 10-12 centimeters supplementary concrete layer poured outside the plan. The actions were proactive and coordinated between 2 individuals, Ryan Hale and Russ Jones. No accident elements in the entire sequence. The report was signed by 3 senior specialists, with digital unit archive data and cross-referenced forensic examination. Lisa read every line repeatedly before signing the approval section. After 16 years, guesses, conflicting statements, and half-finished files now formed a complete event chain, validated by technology and science. That afternoon, Lisa brought the conclusion to the Clark County Prosecutor's office. The small meeting room had fluorescent lights casting over a document-covered table. Prosecutor Evan Blake read each page, occasionally nodding. After nearly an hour, he closed the file and said slowly, "That's enough. No doubts left. We have criminal evidence, witnesses, confessions, and scene reconstruction. The file will be submitted to the prosecutor's office for formal indictment preparation." Lisa nodded lightly, feeling the 16-year burden finally lifted from her shoulders. That evening, in the empty office, she played the reconstruction video again. On the screen, the 3D model showed Daniel stepping toward the desk, Ryan swinging the rod down, then concrete covering everything. When the scene ended, text appeared at the video's end. Scene reconstructed, Silver Bowl, Henderson, Nevada. Lisa turned off the machine and closed the file. In the silence, she knew the truth had been restored, not by words, but by irrefutable evidence. And the next morning, the entire file would be transferred to the Nevada State Prosecutor's office to formally indict the murder case in Daniel Carter's name. On September 14, 2018, nearly 3 months after Daniel Carter's body was exhumed at the Silver Bowl industrial area, the Clark County Prosecutor's Office officially issued indictments against 2 defendants in the shocking case, Ryan Hale and Russ Jones. The full investigation file, including forensic results, scene reconstruction, and statements from both suspects, was reviewed by the prosecutor's office for weeks before the final decision. That morning, as Prosecutor Evan Blake entered the press conference room, over 24 local reporters were present. On the podium, he opened the file stamped red reopened Case 09, Car NV 02. And said slowly, "After 16 years, the disappearance of engineer Daniel Carter is officially determined to be a criminal case. The 2 suspects responsible for the death and concealment have been indicted." According to the indictment, Ryan Hale, 35, was charged with 2 counts, first-degree manslaughter under Nevada Revised Statutes, Section 200.070, and concealing a human body under Section 212.050. The first count carries a penalty of 25 years to life in prison. The second, though lighter, could add up to 10 years imprisonment. Prosecutor Blake explained, "Forensic evidence determines the victim died from 2 strong blows with no signs of self-defense or accident. However, considering personal conflict factors and no evidence of premeditated murder, we indict for manslaughter instead of premeditated murder. Body concealment is a separate intentional act to obstruct investigation." Russ Jones, 38, was charged with 2 counts, accessory after the fact, and obstruction of justice. In the indictment, the prosecutor's office clearly stated, "The defendant knew the crime had occurred but actively assisted in concealment by pouring concrete over the victim's body. Though not directly causing death, the defendant's actions prolonged silence for 16 years. Indicting Russ was deemed necessary to demonstrate legal comprehensiveness, but the prosecution also noted his cooperation during investigation, which could be considered for leniency. The press conference lasted nearly an hour, during which the prosecutor briefly showed the scene reconstruction video that Lisa Morano and the technical team had completed, the temporary office scene. Steel rod blows, then concrete poured over Daniel's body. Images were simulated without violence, but sufficient to convey evidence logic. On the screen, scene reconstruction, Silver Bowl, Henderson, appeared, marking one of the most complex cold cases in the western U.S. as solved. After the conference, LVMPD issued an official statement. Las Vegas cold case solved, the release stated, "Thanks to coordinated efforts between Henderson Police, the Cold Case Unit, and Nevada State Forensic Lab, the 2002 disappearance of construction engineer Daniel Carter has been resolved. DNA evidence, forensic examination, and scene reconstruction confirmed the cause of death and involved parties. It also quoted Lieutenant Lisa Morano, "The truth never fades. It just waits for someone ready to look back." 16 years didn't erase traces. It only delayed justice. That same day, Ryan Hale was escorted to Clark County Preliminary Court for the first hearing. He appeared in orange prison jumpsuit, gaunt face, closely cropped hair. When the judge asked if he pleaded guilty, he replied in a hoarse voice, "No, Your Honor, I didn't mean to kill him." The court-appointed defense attorney requested a continuance to review evidence further, while the prosecution emphasized the file was complete and consistent. Russ Jones, out on electronic monitoring bail, was also present as a cooperating defendant. He said briefly, "I regret staying silent too long." Nevada media covered it extensively that evening. The Las Vegas Review-Journal ran the headline, "The Concrete Secret Beneath Henderson, Case Closed After 16 Years." KSNV News opened with images of the demolished Silver Bowl industrial area, interspersed with Lisa Morano leaving court, thick file in hand. In the broadcast, the anchor said, "The story of a dedicated engineer thought forgotten now has an answer." But the bigger question, why the truth was buried for 16 years, still shocks the Las Vegas community. Within the industry, the case was seen as a prime example of data and evidence recovery in cold case investigation. The CODIS system, 3D reconstruction technology, and old file preservation helped revive a seemingly closed case. Experts called it the Silver Bowl precedent, demonstrating the combination of modern forensic science and traditional records to successfully prosecute crimes after decades. As night fell, the Cold Case Division office still had lights on. Lisa sat alone at her desk, looking at the photo of Daniel Carter, placed next to a printout from an online news site. The headline ran across the top, "Las Vegas Cold Case Solved After 16 Years." She gently ran her finger along the edge of the paper, feeling the closure of a long journey. In the corner of the computer screen, the electronic file 09, CAR, NV, 02, showed a new status filed, prosecuted. 16 years, thousands of hours of work, and finally, the Silver Bowl case had crossed the boundary between doubt and justice, ready to be brought into the light of Nevada's courts. The trial of the state of Nevada versus Ryan Hale and Russ Jones opened on the morning of December 4, 2018, at the Clark County Courthouse in Las Vegas. After 16 years since the night Daniel Carter disappeared, Courtroom 6B, with its oak-paneled walls and the state seal hanging high, became the final place where that story would be told in full. In the front row, Daniel's ex-wife, Melissa Carter, sat silently with their daughter Emily, faces closed off. Across from them, Ryan Hale wore an orange prison jumpsuit, hands clasped, head bowed, eyes on no one. Russ Jones sat a few rows away, uncuffed, in a simple gray shirt, gaunt, gaze vacant. Prosecutor Evan Blake opened with a clear statement, "This case is not just about a death, it is the story of silence, of a crime buried under concrete for 16 years, and of people who believed time could blur justice." He then summarized the events, the conflict between Ryan and Daniel, the altercation at the Silver Bowl site that night, the fatal blows and the concealment. The defense, attorney Mark Ellison, did not deny Ryan was at the scene, but insisted it was a tragic accident stemming from a spontaneous clash, not intent to kill. He emphasized emotion, "My client was only 19, provoked, scared, acting in a moment of impulse. Mr. Carter died from a fall, not from intent to murder." The trial lasted 10 days with dozens of witnesses and experts called. On the third day the courtroom was nearly full when Lieutenant Lisa Morano took the stand. In a dark blue suit, she methodically presented the case breakthrough from the body's discovery to DNA analysis and 3D scene reconstruction. On the large screen in the center of the room, the simulation video played two virtual figures in the site office, one raising a rod, the blows landing, then concrete poured over the body. The room fell silent. When the video ended, Lisa said, "No accident leaves traces like that. The first blow alone was enough to kill Mr. Carter." Next came testimony from Dr. Rebecca Lynn, forensic expert. She detailed the skull fracture, micro cracks, and impact force. This was a downward strike from the right, using a rounded blunt object. Damage depth 3 centimeters. Estimated force over 50 newtons, impossible from a natural fall. When defense counsel asked if Daniel could have fallen onto the steel rod during the scuffle, Rebecca replied firmly, "No, the desk edge and cement floor could not create a round indentation like that. Only a direct strike." On the 5th day, Russ Jones was called as a witness. He appeared trembling, looked straight at the jury, and recounted everything. "I heard them arguing, then a heavy thud. When I ran in, Mr. Carter was already motionless. Ryan told me to help, said it was an accident, but then we poured concrete over him. I was scared. I didn't dare resist." His voice was hoarse, each sentence on the verge of breaking in the silence. When the prosecutor asked, "Did you know what was under the concrete was Daniel Carter's body?" Russ bowed his head. "I knew, and I've regretted it for 16 years. When it was Ryan Hale's turn, he stuck to the accident claim. Under the cold white lights, he looked directly at the prosecutor and said, "I didn't mean to kill him. I was defending myself. It all happened too fast." But when asked why he didn't call for help and instead buried the body, he fell silent. Prosecutor Blake stepped closer, enunciating each word. "You didn't call police, didn't call the company. You called for a concrete truck. You called to conceal, not to save." The words made Ryan bow his head, lips trembling, no rebuttal. Closing arguments ended on the 10th day. The jury reviewed all physical evidence, the steel rod with DNA matching both men, concrete samples, Russ's delivery receipts, and the forensic report confirming direct blows. They were asked to consider manslaughter from intentional violence without premeditation. In his closing, Prosecutor Blake said, "Daniel Carter was robbed of his life simply for trying to protect his daughter. Ryan Hale is not prosecuted for anger, but for choosing violence and choosing to hide his crime." On the afternoon of December 14, 2018, after more than 6 hours of deliberation, the jury returned. Judge Elaine Porter asked, "Have you reached a verdict?" The foreperson stood, holding the paper. "Yes, Your Honor. We find defendant Ryan Hale guilty of first-degree manslaughter and concealment of a human body." In that moment, Melissa Carter gripped her daughter's hand, tears falling silently. Sentencing took place 3 weeks later. The courtroom was quieter, with only a few reporters and the victim's family. Judge Porter read the sentence. Pursuant to Nevada Revised Statute Section 200.070, the court sentences defendant Ryan Hale to 20 years imprisonment at Ely State Prison plus 5 years supervised release. For concealment of a body, the penalty is merged, with no parole eligibility before 15 years. Defendant Russ Jones, due to full cooperation with authorities, is sentenced to 6 years suspended, 3 years special supervision. When the sentence was read, Russ nodded slightly, tears falling. Ryan kept his face down, said nothing. Outside the courthouse, the Las Vegas winter sun faded. Reporters gathered around Lisa Morano as she emerged with Prosecutor Blake. One asked, "How do you feel now that the case is finally closed?" Lisa replied briefly, "Justice came late, but it came." She said no more, just looked into the distance, toward Henderson lying quiet under the twilight sky. Among the old industrial zones, there, the concrete that once hid the truth had been demolished, leaving only bare ground. That evening, CBS Las Vegas News opened with a ticker. Clark County Court sentences Ryan Hale to 20 years. Las Vegas cold case finally closed. Behind the headline were images of the Silver Bowl site today. Now the Sunridge Logistics Commercial Center, lights blazing. A reporter narrated, 16 years after the mysterious disappearance, justice has finally been served. In the cold case division office, Lisa reopened the electronic file and changed the final status on screen. Case 09, Cal, NV, 02, status, solved, convicted. Under notes, she typed one line. Verdict, Ryan Hale, 20 years imprisonment. Russ Jones, suspended sentence. Then she shut down the computer, leaned back in her chair, and watched the city lights reflect through the window. A 16-year case, hundreds of investigation hours, finally ended with undeniable truth and a sentence that allowed Henderson, Las Vegas, and everyone who followed the case for years to breathe a sigh of relief. The Daniel Carter case is not just a story of crime, but a powerful reminder of the resilience of justice and the importance of faith and truth, core values that still shape American society today. 16 years ago, Henderson police couldn't prove what happened due to lack of technology and data, but they preserved every sample, every report. That persistence allowed the 2018 Cold Case Division to find answers when DNA and 3D modeling advanced. In a country where trust in the legal system sometimes wavers, this story proves that science and professional integrity can restore justice, even after decades. Beyond the legal aspect, the story is a warning about impulsiveness and fear of accountability. Two factors that drove Ryan Hale into tragedy. An argument between two men, one a father protecting his daughter, the other a young man trying to prove himself, turned into tragedy with one blow. And when fear overtook reason, Ryan chose to hide the crime under concrete, believing time would bury everything. But in America, where data is preserved and technology advances relentlessly, no secret lasts forever. The lesson is, in modern society, responsibility and transparency are non-negotiable, ethical foundation. Whether in work, family, or community, hiding mistakes only makes consequences worse. Truth may be buried temporarily, but like the concrete at Silver Bowl eventually demolished, it will always find its way back to the light. If you believe that truth, no matter how deeply buried, will one day be found, subscribe to the channel to follow more cold cases solved after years of silence. Thank you for joining the story of Daniel Carter. See you in the next video, where justice is brought to light once again.